Good morning, and welcome to our 7th edition of the Ohio State University's Office of Diversity and Inclusion's Driving Change webinar series, a dialogue and discussion format for our corporate and institutional partners focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion in institutions, places of work, in corporate America. I'm Kurt Ely, Executive Director of Corporate Relations at The Ohio State University, and I'm excited about today's topic of experience equals results. Before we begin, I would like to share a few brief logistics around today's event. First and foremost, we encourage your questions. They will be accepted using the Q&A function during the course of the webinar. Requests for follow-up can also be posted in the same manner. As a reminder, the webinar is being recorded and will be available following today's event. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce the host of this series, Dr. James Moore. Dr. Moore is Vice Provost for Diversity and Inclusion and Chief Diversity Officer for The Ohio State University. Dr. Moore will introduce today's esteemed panelists who will expertly address the topic of experience equals results. Dr. Moore, the program is yours.
Good morning. Thank you, Kurt, and your entire team for coordinating this event with the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. We have a momentous webinar set for our audience today. I'm very excited. Two renowned individuals in the athletic space. We have the great Gene Smith, the 16th athletic director. He certainly has sustained prominence among our athletic program. I know his bio is so extensive that I'm not going to have enough time, but I'm going to encourage you all to go to the website to review his website. But I do know these things are very important, doing amazing job at Ohio State. But I know he's always talking about his lovely wife, Dr. Sheila Smith, his 4 children, and his 8 grandchildren. You always see pictures of those wonderful grandchildren, and they say it's even better to be a grandparent than it is sometimes to be a parent. So we also have our wonderful guest, and we're very excited about the Cleveland Browns in the state of Ohio. There's a buzz. He's the Senior Vice President of Communications. We have Peter John Baptiste. He's have over 25 years in the NFL, and he's going to be our guest. And we just got a riveting webinar that we will be presenting to you all with our 2 guest panelists. We encourage our audience to use the Q&A function to submit their questions, and ongoing I will encourage you to submit your questions. So we do have a script that we've already outlined to start the conversation, but we much rather take questions from each and every one of you. This is an exciting time for The Ohio State University. We just came off 150 years, a celebration of our 150 years, over 150 years of existence. And the Office of Diversity and Inclusion is also over 50 years. So a third of the university existence, the Office of Diversity and Inclusion has been in existence. This webinar gives us the opportunity to showcase our DE&I leaders at The Ohio State University, as well as include other DE&I leaders in other sectors. But today we're going to be specifically focused on sports, professional as well as amateur. I want to start the question. We'll start with you, Gene. How can diverse perspectives provide better solutions? What's the return on investment on diverse perspectives?
Well, thank you, James. Appreciate the opportunity to be here, and really appreciate the opportunity to be here with Peter. And I will echo your comments. I'm so proud of our Browns, being from Cleveland. I used to sneak into the stadium, Peter, years ago. I used to ride my bike down and sneak into the stadium back in the day when you were able to do that. But with today's security, I'm sure kids can't do that. So thank you for your hard work for my Cleveland Browns. But the diversity, James, is the one true thing, as Martin Luther King said, the one true thing that we all have in common. We need to embrace it and celebrate it every single day. When you have an opportunity to bring people together from all walks of life and share the total sum of their experiences from the environments that they've grown up in or the different experiences that they've had, the intellectual knowledge that's gained, the ability to solve problems becomes better because you're bringing all that talent and skill together. I just have always felt that no single individual, actually no two individuals, no three individuals actually can solve a lot of issues and problems. The more people you bring together from diverse backgrounds, the better chance you have to see blind spots. You know, I can always have an ideal about a solution, but you know, I have blind spots, things I just don't know or haven't experienced or even see. So how would you or Peter or in this particular group, we don't have a female on this panel. So how would a female's perspective, if we were the three of us were trying to solve a problem, assist us? So I just think the more that we can embrace our differences in our society and demonstrate respect for them, we all can be better off as we strive to be the best that we can be and help our country and in our incubators where we are, the Cleveland Browns and the Ohio State University, be much better when we bring all that intellectual talent and skill together and all those varied experiences together. I just think it's extremely valuable. And the return on investment is better results, be that quantifiable if you're dealing with a certain environment, or be it altruistic. I mean, at the end of the day, your results, period, are better because you embrace different thoughts and different opinions and different backgrounds.
Thank you. Peter, how can diverse perspectives provide better solutions? What's the return on investment around the D&I space?
Thanks, thanks, Dr. Moore, and Gene. Thanks for the Browns history. Talking about the back in the day when you could sneak into the stadium. Yeah, that's certainly changed now. Now, you know, getting into stadiums across the NFL and probably at Ohio State too, we have fancy things like facial recognition and different security measures that allow you in the building. But always good to know that I'm talking to a Browns fan, and I've been a Ohio State fan for a very long time too. So we definitely share that in common as well. But to get back to your question, Dr. Moore, I think Gene said it really well. I think with our organization, we talk a lot about diversity of thought, and everyone's always trying to solve a problem or solve an issue. When you get diversity of thought, you can come at it from different perspectives and different angles. Gene talked about having blind spots. Well, we all have our own biases. We all have our own thoughts. Unless you have that constructive dialogue coming from people from different backgrounds who have seen problems and situations differently, you're not going to get to the best answers. And that really goes for every facet of every organization. I think about what we do on the football side of our business. There's been a lot of talk about the Browns in the last couple of years about like analytics coming in and dominating what we do in our decision-making process. And that's so false. Analytics are important, but there's people who work for our organization that have an analytical mind and they approach decision-making with data. But then there's another sector of our football staff, when they evaluate talent, you know, they're using the old school scouting means of watching tape and getting a feel for players. And I think what we got right now with the Browns and our success right now is I think our organization is extremely aligned, and they understand how varying opinions and solutions that come from different thought processes lead to the best decisions. And I feel like that's something that without diversity you really can't get to. Gene said it, you know, you got people from all type of different backgrounds working in this setting of professional sports. And if you think overall what really sports is about, there's no other industry that brings people together like sports. I look at the dog pound. I look at the people in our stands. There's people from all different walks of life coming together, rooting for a common goal, rooting for our team. Then you take it to the locker rooms and you see our players, you know, again, all different players from all different walks of life coming together for a common goal, finding the best way to work together to have success. And I think sport is really an example for that, and can be an example for so many other corporations when you look at diverse folks coming together for a common goal and having success. So success is the result we all want. And we've seen so many examples of how diversity can lead us to that. I think we just need to highlight that more and more so people can really understand the benefits of diversity. And that's how we can get to a more diverse organization, community, college, pro sports team, or Fortune 500 company.
Peter, come back to you. I mean, how do leaders create a culture of inclusion? It's oftentimes people talk about diversity, equity, inclusion. They say it starts from the top. So how do leaders foster a culture of inclusion?
Yeah, I think you said it right there. It really starts at the top. And with the Browns organization, it's really on our executive team to own diversity, and it needs to permeate really throughout all of our staffs. But if we break down what we do when we think about diversity, equity, inclusions, there's really three areas we think about, right? It's the people, it's the culture, and it's the community, and that's what we do externally. Now that culture component that you're talking about is so important, because again, we talked about people becoming successful, and people really being able to feel comfortable in themselves, to when we're having those difficult dialogues and those difficult conversations. If you're not comfortable, and you don't have that culture that's inclusive and makes everyone feel worthy, they're not going to bring their best ideas to the forefront, because they're going to be a little bit cautious, or they might be worried, or they might think about how someone might feel about that, or how someone might take that. So it's so important as leaders of our organizations to just make sure we have a culture where people feel valued, people feel like their differences are celebrated, and really with everyone understanding that there's a common goal. There's different ways to get there, but the best way to get there is together. And finding that path requires honest, open dialogue, and that's the type of dialogue that comes about when you have an inclusive culture, and that's what we strive for.
Thank you. Gene, how do leaders foster a culture of inclusion?
Yeah, I think Peter said it well, and I'll just add a couple of things. I think first and foremost, the leader has to set the tone. She or he has to be intentional. And as Peter said, but behavior begets culture. And so I've tried to always implement different tactics to demonstrate my commitment to diversity. First and foremost, I talk about it. In our all staff meetings, or our executive team meetings, or our head coaches meetings, there's moments and times when I talk about the value of diversity. Secondly, it's in our hires, is in who we hire. Be it gender or racial or age. We do everything we can to ensure that our team is a diverse team. And then, there's different tactics you implement, different committees, different work groups, different task forces you put together. I literally will take the time to make sure that we have diversity of thought. So we may have a task force on a particular issue, and I may pull a grounds crew guy in and put him on there, because he'll come in totally blind, to the issue, and ask questions that might appear to be not the right questions, but they're curious questions that make us think. I have a habit of always saying, help me understand, or help me see what I don't see. I will literally sometimes say, I think I got a blind spot here, something I'm missing, help me understand what I'm missing. So when the leader does that, when the leader says those type of things, it empowers and it enables everyone else to use those tactics and strategies, and ultimately you create the culture where diversity as a part of that culture is recognized and ultimately embraced. So you have to be intentional. I've had open positions in the past where I knew I had to hire a female, or I knew I had to hire someone of color. And I would literally work to make sure the pool was a significantly diverse pool. So you have to be intentional as a leader to ultimately demonstrate your commitment to that. There's an old saying that many of us are familiar with. It's called the shadow of a leader, and I want my teammates to be in that shadow when it comes to diversity. To follow me.
Gene, you said something that was very powerful. You said that I knew I needed to do X. I needed to hire a person of color. I needed to hire a woman. What were the conditions or the things that you were thinking about that said, I know I need to do this? Was it, what, tell me more. I want to get behind the leader, because certainly you want our tremendous leaders around the country, or arguably around the world, particularly in the athletic space, but your work goes even beyond athletics, because I know things you do that sometimes people don't know that goes beyond the athletic space. So tell me, what is it? What are you thinking? Because you're from Cleveland. I'm sure I've heard you talk about your mother and father. I'm sure that they gave you a philosophy, a life, and an experience that you wedded with your leadership style. So tell me more.
Yeah, that's almost a full-blown hour presentation there, James. But I'll try and shorten it. But Peter said it well. Leadership is about people. It's about relationships. The ability to bring a group of people together and integrate them in a way where they work towards a common goal. When you think about a football team, as Peter shared, you think about an offensive line. Those 5 guys probably come from different socioeconomic backgrounds, urban environment, rural environment. There's different religions. There's married, non-married. I just go on and on and on. But we asked them to come together and execute 80 to 90 plays a game so you can outscore your opponent. Set aside all your differences. That's a great example of sport and diversity. But to your question, leadership is about people. It's about making sure that you focus on the individual people and helping them grow personally and professionally. I never will have the highest IQ in the world, never. But I go to war with my EQ. I'll go to war with my self-awareness, my self-management, my ability to manage group dynamics, all those type of things. So to your question, James, I spend a lot of time looking at my team and making sure that we don't have gaps. And and if I have a gap, then I'm going to develop a strategy to fill that gap. Be it in this world of that we have now with transfer portal and name, image, and likeness emerging and the social media platforms. I don't listen to the old school players. I got to go to the students. I got to go to where they are. So I got to make sure that my team, they go to the source and get feedback. So I don't know, there's a lot there, James, but at the end of the day, it's about people and making sure that as a leader, you look at your team, and it's not just about looking at the technical talent and skill, not the blocking and tackling. I'm looking at, I might need a female perspective there, or I might need an international perspective there. We're all Americans, we're all domestic. We might need an international perspective on that team. So I've spent a great deal of time focused on making sure my team has what it needs relative to diversity, depending upon what we're doing. So there's a lot there, but most of it in my life came from my mother, who taught me those things. And my dad actually just taught me work ethic. He just said, plow the soil. But mom taught me the value of people.
Thank you. Peter, you in an industry that the optics would suggest that the majority of the athletes in the NFL are African American, and many of them we see, but we don't always see them in the leadership positions. And so the NFL has been a leader in many ways, putting programs together, but seemingly the programs we haven't seen the major returns on the investments on those things. You know, tell us what the Rooney Rule is and what it was in, and if you could tweak it, if you had the power to tweak the Rooney Rule, how would you tweak it? Tell us first what it is in a simplistic form, and then how would you tweak it?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Moore. The Rooney Rule has been around, I want to say we're probably going on 15 years. And I like the rule at its core. I think it's done a lot for the NFL. You know, it's funny, the NFL gets a lot of negative attention because of the results. But if you look at the Rooney Rule at its core, I mean, it started as a basic requirement. Whenever you have a head coaching position or a general manager position, you have to interview at least one minority candidate before you can make your hire. So this really forced owners and general managers to slow down their process. A lot of times, you know, we said this before, that diversity of thought. A lot of times I think it doesn't just happen in the NFL, but when we're hiring, we hire people we're comfortable with. We hire people that we know, and we have in our mind that this person should be the person that we're going to hire before we even begin the interview process. And what the Rooney Rule strives to do is really slow down that process, because a lot of times you're going to make bad hires when you do that, when you're hiring based just on reputation and you're not really digging in to who that person might be. So it presented that requirement to our ownership and general managers. The rule has since evolved over the last, I want to say 2 years, where it's been expanded. So no longer is the Rooney Rule just about head coaches and general managers. We've expanded that on the business side of our organizations throughout the NFL. So that's your president, that's your your COO, that's your executive vice president, that's your VPs of sales and marketing. Really wanted to try to expand it to hit all those areas. So you're not just thinking about it when it comes from the coach and the general manager perspective. Because guess what? If you have diversity throughout your organization on the business side, and your owners are just having a better understanding of what diversity does throughout the organization and how it helps you, I think it opens their eyes so they can really see the benefits of it. And I've had this discussion with our ownership, Dee and Jimmy Haslam. We talked about the fact that it starts at the top, and they have had an extremely their track record. If you look at diversity hires amongst the NFL, you can't put their record. You can't put anyone up there that would have a better track record of really thinking about diversity and hiring those positions. We've had 3 general managers that are African American males. We've had a head coach that was African American. So I think the Rooney Rule has worked. I think early on, you know, that initial step was taken, and you can see it. You talk about arrival of the Cleveland Browns. You look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. That rule is named after the Rooney ownership, and really Mike Tomlin was a coach that was hired. He wasn't really on anyone's radar. The Rooneys, you know, stopped the process and did a good job of really, you know, vetting the minority candidates who were out there. And they found Mike Tomlin when no one was really talking about him being a head coach. And look at the success that man has had for that organization in the years that he's been there. I mean, I don't think he's had a losing season since he's been here. That team has made the playoffs every single year. So glad we beat them twice last year at the end of the year to get to the playoffs and then advance to the second round. But I mean, you can't look any further at a great outcome for someone that used the Rooney Rule the correct way and found a head coach who has been really successful for that organization and has been a model for the NFL. So I would say the Rooney Rule, its intent initially was good. It was a step. I love the way it has evolved, and now it's no longer just about finding one candidate. Now you got to find multiple candidates when these openings happen. And now I think what's really good too is the business side of organizations has followed suit. So that means more opportunities for diverse candidates. And to be honest with you, what I think it really means is a more successful NFL and more successful NFL teams, because diversity is being pushed to the forefront.
Thank you. Gene, just recently, the Knight Commission on Intercollegiate Athletics, I'm sure you probably reviewed the report, and the report was called Achieving Racial Equity in College Sports. And they made specific recommendations, but these recommendations were very tailored to Black student athletes at the collegiate level. And one of the recommendations was adopting a parallel to the Rooney Rule. And it was called the Bill Russell Rule, requiring each institution to include a member of a traditionally underrepresented community in the pool of final candidates for athletic leadership positions, including athletic director and head coaches. Any thoughts or reflections on that recommendation?
Yeah, I think that that's a great recommendation. I did read the report, and I like the concept. I think that we need a more definitive approach to making sure that everyone has a diverse pool of candidates and ultimately provides that opportunity. We investigated years ago the potential implementation of the Rooney Rule, but it won't work in the public sector. It just won't work. So how do you draw kind of that balance? And I think that that's what the Knight Commission was trying to do, is trying to thread that needle. And it gets back a little bit to the old affirmative action days of, when it was really, affirmative action was really strong. And affirmative action was more about the pool. Everyone thought it was about a quota or a hire, but it's more about the pool, getting people the opportunity to interview. And so I think it's a great idea. I think it's important to do. And I think one of the things that we have to do is fill the pipeline. We have to. We have to help organizations know who the candidates are. Peter said it. The Rooneys paused and they went on their search. But how do we help a school, be it administrator or a coach, have in front of them candidates where they don't have to dig and dig and dig to fill the pool? Every athletic director has a hip pocket of names for different positions. How do we make sure that hip pocket is a diverse pool in that pocket? So we need to keep doing that. There's a number of initiatives that are happening, some through the NCAA, some through different coaches organizations, where we're developing candidates. In fact, I was on a call doing mock interviews Sunday night with African-American assistant football coaches who, the more you interview, the better you look. It's kind of a beauty contest. So we do mock interviews to help them and then do an evaluation of their interview. And so we're just trying to fill that pool.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that. I think it's very important. Peter, I want to come back, and this comes from the audience. The Rooney Rule, for the most part, it was trying to get diversity around race. This question comes from the audience, and is directed at you. Do you envision the Rooney Rule being more inclusive to include women? More and more, we're beginning to see the NFL embrace women, and I think the Denver Broncos just hired a woman for one of their senior recruiting positions. So do you envision that happening?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I'll answer it in two parts. First, I would say the expansion of the Rooney Rule on the business side includes women. So we talk about, Gene said it, we talk about being intentional and deliberate. If we aren't those two things, diversity will never happen. I'm not sure when's the appropriate time to expand the Rooney Rule to women on the coaching side. But I will say one of the good things that we have seen in recent times, especially here in the NFL, is a lot of coaches and general managers are a lot more intentional about bringing women into the scouting and coaching side of what's being done. Here at the Browns, I'll speak for us. when we hired Coach Stefanski, diversity was top of mind for him. It was something that he knew he wanted to do with his staff. So he hired Callie Bronson to be his chief of staff. His chief of staff position was a position he held when he first broke into the league with the Minnesota Vikings. And he kind of sees this role as a person who works really closely with the coach and coaches, kind of sees all the things that come to the head coach's office. So he talks about his experience as the chief of staff, I think it was for Brad Childress when he was with the Vikings, as really being his pipeline and the opportunity for him to really see what comes across the head coach's desk and what would be important for him to know as he aspired to be a head coach. So him bringing in Callie Bronson, I'm sure his mindset is of the same thought. And the other thing he does with Callie too is he rotates, and Gene said this, development is such an important part of diversity too, being intentional about that development. So he has Callie working with a different position group every year so she can build her resume and she can learn about all the different aspects of coaching. And Callie played professional women's football. Like she understands the game of football. It's not a surprise. It's what she grew up doing. So that's just on the coaching side. And you've seen, I mean, there were women assistant coaches who won Super Bowls this year with the Tampa Bay Bucks. So more and more we're seeing women get involved on the coaching side. Another great thing the NFL has done is they've opened up this annual Women in the NFL Forum, where again they're giving women who want to work in football the opportunity to kind of network with coaches, network with personnel people. Again, that's the pipeline. That's how you kind of establish the relationships that get you the opportunities and get you the jobs on this level. Now on the scouting side, Andrew Berry, our EVP and general manager, he's done the same thing. He's looked at scouting assistants positions and scouting positions, and he's identified females that have worked really hard to earn an opportunity, and he's given them that opportunity. So I think more and more you're going to see women on the football side of things and on the sporting side of things throughout professional sports, and that's a welcomed addition for sure.
One thing I'll add for Peter, and he didn't mention that the NFL's done an excellent job, and it really is cascaded into the collegiate world around football, is officiating. You see more women officiating at the NFL level, and certainly you see it more at the collegiate level. So I think Peter's right. When you look at the NFL, all of us, and even the collegiate space, we always put a high emphasis on the head coach, rightfully so. However, it's really significantly improved over the years for women on the collegiate space, administratively, and also in the NFL, and also in the NBA. They're not represented here, but that has happened a lot too. There's more and more administrative positions that are held by women today than a long time ago.
Gene, I want to go back. John Thompson and John Chaney, they were iconic basketball coaches and took a stance on many things around Prop 48, SATs. I want to direct your attention back to the report on achieving racial equity in college sports. And one of the recommendations that the group made is permanently eliminating standardized test scores as an athletic eligibility criterion. And it seems that this has been an ongoing recommendation, but it was on the top of the list, right? Out of all the things. And so where do you think we are with that? And they propose more of a holistic review. In general, I think most universities say they do a holistic review, but seemingly, are we being too punitive on student athletes? Are we direct? And I know that's a probably loaded question, but being a former student athlete, and I came up in the era of Prop 48, and many of those athletes could have did the work, and me being, doing the research I do, the SAT and ACT predicts the first year at best. It doesn't predict graduation. all the things that you talk about, resiliency, working hard, EQ, that we all know make a difference, seemingly they don't have the same kind of weight. So what's your thought on that? First of all, are we at this place that we should revisit this? Because I just discovered University of California did away with standardized tests. Now that's one of the top university systems in the United States, and they did away with the SAT and ACT. So want to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I've always been a person that have felt that the ACT and SAT should be eliminated from the eligibility requirements for student athletes. I was with John Thompson and back in the day, and John Chaney and others, and I believe that when Prop 48 was implemented, the intent was the right thing, but the way it was done eliminated a lot of opportunities for young people of color who could have been matriculated in the collegiate environment. So, it's personal for me because I remember taking that SAT back in the day. I'm from the east side of Cleveland. I had no clue what a sloop was, and I learned later that I had to do something with a sailboat. How in the heck was I supposed to know what a sloop was on a freaking sailboat? And I'm like, I was like, there were a number of questions like that off of that test. I came back and said, Mom, what the heck is a sloop? So, to me, the reality is that those tests do not recognize a person's academic capability. And in our environment, and many of my colleagues across the country, we have programs in place where we analyze an individual's deficiency, for example, when they first come into the university environment. Then we have in place, because athletics can do this, our little incubator can have academic advisors, counselors, tutors, and things of that nature, where we can help that person in their first 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks overcome that deficiency and strengthen their talents and skills relative to that deficiency. And so they ultimately develop a strength as a result of our efforts, and they can matriculate. And it has nothing to do with an SAT or an ACT. It has to do with the environment that they came from. Our public school system is challenged in this country. And at the end of the day, there's students who are highly capable of getting their degrees, but they just did not come from an environment that helped them overcome a particular deficiency, be it math, be it English, be it writing, whatever it is. And we're able to help them do that. So I've never been a supporter of standardized tests as an evaluator for someone's capacity to matriculate in college. And so I'm always been one that said we should eliminate it and look at other things, GPA and certainly the courses. I've been a believer in the core courses. I think that initially there were 12 that we said when we did Prop 48. Now that's up to 16. I'm not, that hung up on the sciences as we've expanded it. However, I think that those are more important than some standardized test score.
Thank you. Peter, tell us about some of your DE&I assets that, we have an audience and we have people from the corporate sector as well as individuals who come from other sectors as well. But tell us about the assets that you all have that you feel very proud of, the ones that you feel very proud of in advancing your DE&I goals.
All right, that's a great question, Dr. Moore, and I'll give you 3. I'll start with, again, just kind of going back to how in the NFL, I think a lot of the attention goes to the Rooney Rule and what happens on the football side. I feel like we've done a really solid job with diversity on the football side of our organization. On the business side, we all look at that area. Gene said this earlier, self-awareness. You got to know where you need to improve. And on the business side, we're not exactly where we want to be. And that's going to take deliberate action and work. And one of the things I'm really excited about is last year, we launched the Haslam Sports Group Diversity and Opportunity Fellowship. And what this fellowship does is we've hired 4 diverse recent college grads. They're going to start in June. And again, you talk about these opportunities that are lacking. We talk about the workforce and the pipeline that we don't have and a lot of organizations don't have. So we really looked at this fellowship and we thought, what can we do to increase that pipeline? What can we do to give these diverse young fellows a leg up? So we didn't really talk about this in the intro, but the Haslam Sports Group, which owns the Cleveland Browns and the Columbus Crew, not the Columbus Crew SC or Columbus SC, just the Columbus Crew. We have these two entities, and we thought, wouldn't it be great if some young diverse students could come in and not just focus in one area, really work in a bunch of different departments across these two organizations. So they could learn about marketing in the NFL. They could learn about admin and legal in the MLS. So creating and crafting this fellowship, we're really excited about. We got these 4 students coming in June. They're going to work across multiple disciplines in 2 organizations, and we really feel like, I think back to when I was first starting out, when I was first getting my foot wet. I worked for the Boston Celtics, and I worked in community relations. Now, if my first opportunity in pro sports gave me experience in multiple departments, there's no telling where I might be right now, because you just gain this depth of knowledge from all these different disciplines. And everyone in our organization is really behind this. It's not like there's one person driving this. We've developed this curriculum throughout multiple departments in our organization, and we feel like this is going to be a great fellowship for these 4 young students. We got one from Ohio State too, just so you know. Then I'd also like to talk about, I said this earlier, how when you think about DE&I, you got to think about your people, you got to think about your culture, you also got to think about your community and what you're doing in the community. So in Columbus with the Crew, we got this massive stadium and development project that we've been working on. New Crew Stadium is set to open on June 3rd. And one of the things that our ownership and myself is really proud about is we were really pushed on the community level to make sure that we were well represented in the minority business space. So the construction component of the stadium, it's a $300 million stadium. 74 million of that of the cost is going directly to women and minority owned construction businesses. So that type of number and that type of minority participation on a project of this size just doesn't happen. So we're extremely proud of that. What we also found out throughout this construction process is we hired a consultant. Her name's Nancy Tidwell, and she's like keenly focused on how it's not only about like the opportunity of the businesses that can handle a construction project of this magnitude. There's also an aspect where you have these subcontractors coming in, and you're trying to mentor them and prepare them so they can grow their business. And then maybe instead of being like subcontractors on the next project, maybe they become prime contractors. So it's really a way to just, you're giving exposure, you're giving these minority companies business, but you're also trying to help them grow so they can expand and help others. So I would say those are 2 things that we're really, really proud of that we've done. I think, the mayor in Columbus is pretty excited about the historic minority numbers that have been included on this construction project. And then really trying to dive in and help the pipeline, increase the pipeline of minority professionals on the business side through our Haslam Sports Group Fellowship. I mean, again, you got to be deliberate. You got to come up with a plan. And that's the only way you really become diverse organizations. It just doesn't happen by happenstance. It's not just going to happen by accident. You got to be deliberate about it. And those 2 projects we're excited about.
Well, we're really excited about it, and we're even more excited when you said we have at least one Buckeye that will be in that opportunity. But Gene, I know you have major D&I assets as well, and certainly one of the leaders in the space in intercollegiate athletics. And I know we have the Gene Smith Institute for Leadership. Could you tell us more about that as well as any other DEI assets? Because I'm sure people want to hear about what you're doing in this space, and many of our viewers, they're looking for talent. You know, they're looking for talent and diversity. And oftentimes we overlook the student athletes sometimes as a viable entity to recruit for the filling vacancies in their workplace.
Yeah, you know what we're trying to do, James, and we've been doing it for a while. I've always had the view that we need to have in place the total student athlete development program, and the Leadership Institute has evolved to that. And when you think about our student athlete that we serve today, you know, she or he probably never worked in their lives. You know, they were shuttled around to different contests in the summertime, be it soccer or baseball games, and so they really didn't get an opportunity to work like a lot of people did or do. And so, how do we help them understand what the work environment is like? How do we help them prepare for post Ohio State? So, you know, years ago, one of our first initiatives was to make sure every student athlete in their sophomore year had a resume. It was a requirement. In order to compete, you had to have a resume that you wrote, and it was edited and vetted. And then we began the process of setting up mock interviews. And then we began the process of setting up internships. Athletes are very challenging to have internship opportunities in the summertime because of their schedule. They're competing or going to school. So we've been able to work with different businesses in our community, different units on campus, and set up what we call micro internships, be it 10 hours, 15 hours, sometimes 20 a week. But mainly to get the student athlete in the work environment for the first time. Now, some athletes have worked in their lives, but not a lot of them. And so this was getting them into that environment. So our goal with the Leadership Institute is before graduation in May, we want 100% of our student athletes to know what they're doing before they walk across the stage. Be that go to grad school, sign a professional contract, or have a job. And what we try and do is try and talk to them about a career, not just a job, about a career, something that you're really interested in or passionate about. So this year, before graduation last weekend, a week ago, we had 92% of our student athletes in that situation. So we're working on that other 8% now. And then there's always a couple that are going to go find themselves and take a gap year. So reaching that 100% is always challenging. But the primary objective of the Leadership Institute is that, but also it goes back a little bit to what Peter said. You know, athletics is one of the few incubators left in higher education where you bring diverse people together, not just ethnicity, not just people from rural environments or international environments. You have different sexual preferences. You know, we years ago in 2008, we started our LGBT Now Q program where and it actually was organic from our student population. Now we have a huge program around that and making sure that we have sensitivities to that environment and what everyone needs in that space, and having people being open to it. And so the main thing is to help student athletes take what they learned through competition and be able to articulate it in an interview. So when they sit down with Peter and Peter asks them if they can handle pressure, that student athlete can talk about a moment in their collegiate career where they had to deal with pressure. A field goal kicker in front of 110,000 people, you know, with no time on, with 2 seconds on the clock, and we're down by 2, you know, and he's got to make the field goal, you know, or a wrestler, you know, who may be you know, when you think of wrestling, you know, those 2 athletes in front of 4,500 people in our Cavelli Arena, and it's just them. It's just them. And so but teaching them how to talk about that. What does that mean? And so there's so many elements to what a student athlete, the lessons that are learned through a student athlete experience that are advantageous in the workplace, that employers have flocked to us to try and hire our student athletes. So anyway, that's a long answer, James, but the Leadership Institute is about that, trying to help our student athletes find a career path, but also be able to help them articulate what they learn through sport competition and participation.
And for those of you who are out there, I'm sure Gene would welcome opportunities to engage you if your company is interested in having a relationship with the athletic department. So I encourage you to reach out to Gene. Let's pivot a little bit while we have a little time, and I promise everyone we will get out on time. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about George Floyd. And on May 25th, we'll be celebrating, well, not celebrating, it would be a year anniversary of that horrific incidents. And the whole nation, the world, were kind of startled by what we saw. Tell us how the George Floyd incidents fostered greater reflections and inclusion in your specific domains. Start with you, Peter.
Sure. That I think was really a tough time for everyone, right? But I always like to look at the positive, and I think about, for us, you know, we were in the pandemic, people weren't working in the office together. It just impacted people in so many different ways. And I think for our organization with the Browns, it created more dialogue. And we talk about diversity, we talk about the benefits of diversity. And I think at that time, it was a blessing that our organization had a Black general manager in Andrew Berry, because I think all of us as you know, our players, really everyone in our organization, I mean, we were all struggling with really how to cope. And Andrew did something, I'd call it heroic. He didn't really look at it as much, but he penned a letter to our entire organization. And he basically, in this letter, just made everyone in the organization understand how they might not feel that they were being impacted by what happened with George Floyd, because maybe they weren't looking at it, or maybe it's nothing that they really thought about. But he sent an email to everyone in our organization that just was just kind of reflected on what was going on in our country. And he challenged everyone to try to gain more knowledge and understand the history of race relations in our nation. And out of it came a program that we kind of dubbed Be the Solution. And it's a resource on our website that we tried to encourage our fans to go read and have dialogue about the race issues that are going on in our country. And it kind of created, I think it created a movement amongst our fans to really think differently about maybe what they had seen in the past. You know, there was all this, I mean, we're having a candid conversation. There was a lot of hate towards what Colin Kaepernick did many years ago. And there was a lot of discussion from our fans about how our players, they took the opportunity to kneel to bring more attention to the problems that were going on in this world. And I think Andrew sent this email to everyone just to kind of let everyone understand how people were feeling. And it just created dialogue within our organization. And then beyond that, like it brought together, I don't know if many of you guys know about what was created here in Cleveland with our 3-team alliance, the Cavs, the Indians, and the Browns. We formed an alliance to shed light on these issues. We've kind of come together and we spend time every week on a call trying to develop plans and programs that allow our 3 organizations to use our platform to elevate these issues and show to all of our fans that we're united on this front. We're united on this front of trying to, end the racial disparity and the issues that have been a part of our community for so long. So we've kind of, what's come out of it is we've really focused on three areas. We encouraged everyone to get out and vote, right, during the election. We're going to continue to do that going forward, even when people aren't paying attention to the local elections. We've made law enforcement and community relations an emphasis and something the three of us want to continue to focus on. So we've created a speaking series where we have law enforcement officers and young Cleveland youth having constructive dialogue. And then the third component, the third area we really focused on would be education. And education is something that the Browns have kind of long focused on. Dee and Jimmy Haslam have put a lot of resources towards improving education in underserved communities. But a lot of good things are coming out of what happened a year ago. And I think it's important that all of us as citizens of this state continue to use our platform and use our power to impact these areas that can make our nation such a better place.
30 seconds, Gene, if you have anything to share.
Sorry, I went too long. Sorry about
No,
that.
You're fine. No, Peter, that was awesome. And actually, I won't be, the two things I would share is dialogue. And Peter alluded to that. I go back to the John Carlos days and Tommy Smith days. At the end of the day, we've created an ongoing dialogue as a result of the tragedy that occurred with George Floyd. In our history, we've had these moments, but there's always been some reason that we've stopped our initiatives around dialogue and improvement. This one, I think, will sustain. So dialogue. The other one is respect. And this ties a little bit to the question that was in the chat. The individuals have different views, around Black Lives Matters, around political issues, around the coronavirus. Everybody has a different issues, and this ties directly to what we're talking about relative to diversity. How do we respect and have calm, respectful conversations? And that's what we need to do in our society. Is if someone believes that the Black Lives Matter movement should be about all lives matter, okay, you believe that, then let's talk about it. Let's talk about why the Black Lives Matter movement emerged. If you think the coronavirus is a hoax, okay, help me understand. Help me understand. But it's not disrespectful. At the end of the day, grown people should learn how to disagree respectfully. And that's what we've lost in our society. We want to turn to a fight. And it's really disheartening. We need to respect each other's thoughts, feelings, and opinions and not make it visceral.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. That ends this webinar. I now have to give the floor to Kurt Ely. I really thank you for taking time out of your schedules and thank you for the work that you're doing. I think our sports is in a better place because we have you two at the helm of leadership, and we look forward to continue this dialogue. If there's anything we can do in the Office of Diversity and Inclusion to be a part of the things that you're doing, please don't hesitate to reach out. Kurt, the floor is now yours.
Dr. Moore, Gene, Peter, thank you for your time, sharing the insights, demonstrating leadership, overall commitment, and participation. It's excellent and very valued, and thank you for your time and insights today. I'd also like to thank all participants for taking the time to share part of your day with us. A survey will pop up immediately at the end of the webinar. We hope you'll take a few minutes to share your feedback with us. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you. Go Browns, go Bucks.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Take care.
Take care.